Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Group Chief Executive, Communications, Media and Technology, Accenture, Omar Abbosh.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back here at MWC. So this morning's segment is about the next generation. And when you're at MWC and someone says those words, we automatically think about 5G. And indeed, 5G is a massive shift in capability, connecting not only all the people, but also all of our things. In this shift that's happening, in this world of increasing ubiquitous connectivity, we're seeing a new generation of products, services, companies, and industries emerge, all powered, yes, by 5G, but also artificial intelligence, drones, robots, bringing all kinds of new services and capabilities that will become more and more pervasive in every aspect of our lives. Now, obviously, those products and services and companies are all powered by people, and people from a very diverse range across the age spectrum. And indeed, today, during this segment, you will hear perspectives and views from folks across a wide age spectrum to share their views with you about the meaning of this new connectivity. So in the first of our three segments this morning, I'm very pleased to bring on stage shortly an icon of the world telecommunications connectivity sector. He doesn't really need much introduction. He's famous for his perspective on a world of increased connectivity and what it means for corporations, helping them navigate an increasing period of technology advancement. He's on the board of BlackRock. He is the chair of the US-Japanese Business Council, and he is also on the board of trustees for the Ford Foundation. He has been transforming the business model of his company, helping Cisco with continuous reinvention, and also in pivoting its business model onto an as-a-service subscription-based model. So ladies and gentlemen, without much further ado, please join me in welcoming the CEO and chairman of Cisco, Chuck Robbins.
Well, good morning. How's everybody? Shh. You guys have been way too rowdy this morning. We are truly embarking on an incredible time. And for those of you who have been coming to this event for a few years, I think we all reflect back, and I think back 3 or 4 years ago, and what were we talking about? 5G. The year after that, we were talking about 5G. And the year after that, we were talking about 5G. Right? And last year, something seemed to change. Last year, we seemed to talk about it a little differently. We talked about 5G. I actually believe it's going to happen. And here we are this year, and you saw the statistics that were flowing on the screen. And we begin to think about what's possible, not only from a business perspective, but from a human perspective. And as we think about this next phase that we're getting ready to enter into, it is going to be like no other phase we've ever seen. I've been doing this a long time. And I've said to the press over the last week, this is one technology that feels like the hype is going to be reflected in the reality. This is going to come to fruition in a way that we had hoped for the last few years. And you saw some of the staggering statistics, and we just released our visual networking index this year for the 13th time. And we had similar statistics, but some that really stood out to me. We believe in the year 2022, 3 years away, in that year, there will be more traffic created than there has been created since the inception of the internet. Think about that, 1 year. We think there'll be roughly 400 million plus 5G connections in 3 years. We may be off, but if we're off, it's probably going to be higher. 5% of the total mobile connections, 4 billion machine-to-machine connections. IoT is going to become very real as we move forward. And these connections are going to generate 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times the traffic of each of your mobile devices that you're carrying in your pocket today, or each of the 3 mobile devices that you're carrying on your body somewhere today. It's going to be massive scale. And this has huge implications for all of us. What will it make possible? Well, we all know the #1 killer app is going to be my 17-year-old son taking his 5G phone, turning it into a hotspot, and 20 of his friends playing Fortnite, right? That's what we're all trying to enable, right? That's why we're here. You're going to see incredible applications. The impact to industries like manufacturing, transportation, mining, autonomous driving. But perhaps autonomous driving first shows up in places like mines, where we can have heavy machinery being operated autonomously so we don't put people's lives at risks. Manufacturing, robots, automated, precision. But we also know that 5G and this next wave doesn't only create a tremendous opportunity for all of us from a business perspective, but it also opens up a world of opportunity for the applications and the capabilities that we can deliver to actually help people all over the world. Think about what's possible. We recently entered into an agreement in Canada with a Center for Addiction and Mental Health with our friends at Deloitte. And what we're doing there is we're taking the heavy concentration of mental health experts that exist in major metropolitan areas, and we're leveraging video technology to deliver that expertise out into rural parts of Canada where people are suffering from mental health, but they can't get appointments. That still requires high-speed terrestrial networks. Think about what we're able to do when we truly have 5G. We can deliver that kind of capability, any type of healthcare, any medical expertise anywhere in the world. For years, we've been talking about rural connectivity. How do we get broadband everywhere? This technology will allow us to take high-speed connectivity to places we've never been able to get it, where we can actually then provide connectivity to everyone, provide education to everyone, and therefore provide opportunity to everyone. And what's this going to require? What do we have to think about as we go forward? It's going to make us think differently about how we architect this underlying technology. And the network, your network, the technology you put in the network, is going to be different than anything we've ever built. We all know that we have built networks over the years and we've kept adding to them and adding to them and adding to them. And we, with many of you now, are actually trying to take those historical networks that have become incredibly complicated and we're trying to simplify. We're trying to delayer them. We're trying to aggregate. We're trying to make them simpler because we need to cut down the operational complexity. We need to give ourselves the ability to move with greater speed. And so these early waves of this next connectivity, the pilots, the trials that we're all seeing begin to roll out now, those will most likely be run in these existing networks. And then we have to transition. And we have to build new networks. We have to build new, massively scalable, simple, secure networks that are reliable, programmable, automatable, software-defined. Pick your buzzword about networking. We have to have all the buzzwords. High performance, cloud-delivered, trusted, and secure. We have to embark on building this next-generation architecture that will support billions of 5G connections at the edge of the network. Think about what that's going to require. I have discussions all the time, whether it's with reporters or folks that say 5G is all about the radio network. And I have to try to equate it to a traffic system. I was in New York before I came here. And I said, what if we made every highway coming into New York City 40 lanes, and we didn't do anything to the center of Manhattan? It might get a little congested. Right? We need to build next generation, fast, secure, scalable networks to accommodate this. And at the same time, we have multiple transitions going on. We have 5G, we have Wi-Fi 6, we have AI, we have automation. And the way we think about this is that these technologies are going to be incredibly important to each other. We see enterprise customers beginning to roll out Wi-Fi 6, while the 5G implementations will most likely still be in pilots. But Wi-Fi 6 and 5G are built to work together. Wi-Fi 6 is built to be an offload of the 5G infrastructure, the 5G networks. And as we think about our enterprise customers, we think about their technology domains. They have a data center, which is a domain. They have a security architecture, which is a domain. They have a campus network, it's a domain. They have a branch network, that's a domain. And as we think about 5G in this wide area network, and we think about Wi-Fi 6, these are both domains that we have to bring together for our customers. And these enterprise customers are going to be driving the first waves of real IoT, these mobile workers using 5G and Wi-Fi. And it's so important for us to allow those enterprise customers to drive a common security policy across their private networks all the way through to their 5G networks with many of you in this room. And we have not, as an industry, done a good job of that over the years. But this is an opportunity for us to do so, where we can provide transparency of policy, security, quality, and operations for our enterprise customers from the enterprise all the way through to the 5G access that they are consuming from many of you in this room. GSMA asked most of the operators here where they thought the first revenue streams would come from. And almost 70% of you said the enterprise. We get over 75% of our revenues as a company from the enterprise. And one of the key strategies that we believe is important in helping you build out your 5G strategy is not only how can we help you build your network, not only how can we help you build security into that network, not only how can we help you connect to the enterprise, but how can you build services, new services because of what 5G makes possible. New enterprise services that are simple, that are easy to deploy. And we believe that this will extend the opportunities that you have. We introduced this technology called intent-based networking. And our enterprise customers are going to want that intent or their policy to be able to be extended from the private networks into their 5G infrastructure. And we believe that if we can do that together, then you can actually monetize your investments and build services that the enterprise customers will be very happy to consume as we move forward. And if we can integrate that policy across both sides of this, then our enterprise customers will be much more capable of building integrated networks with their private infrastructure, leveraging 5G for mobile users, for IoT, for connected remote branches. And this is where we think it all comes together to actually drive great success for you on the investments that you're going to make over the next few years. We announced an example of this week with our friends from Verizon. We announced our SD-WAN solution from Cisco connected via 5G in their early trials that has the ability to connect the policy from the enterprise all the way from their enterprise policy management system all the way through the SD-WAN system into the 5G infrastructure of Verizon. And these are kinds of things that we can do together going forward. The last thing I want to touch on is one really important thing that I think we'll all have to think through over the next couple of years, is as we go to build out this capability, partnerships are going to be incredibly important. This industry is going to move fast. Once this starts, it is going to move very rapidly. We've seen over the last 5 to 6 to 7 years, particularly in the enterprise space, that those customers who aren't moving forward, leveraging technology to fundamentally rethink their strategy, are either worried about being left behind or are being left behind, and that's going to happen in this space as well. When this goes, it's going to go quickly. And we're all going to have to bet on partners that we can trust to help take us and work with us to actually achieve what it is we're trying to achieve. So today, I'm going to turn over the stage in a moment to Rakuten, who's building the first new mobile network operator to launch in Japan in over a decade. It's the first end-to-end fully virtualized cloud-native network, open multi-vendor architecture. We've had, I think over the last year, 60 to 70 of our technology specialists on site on data center, packet core, transport, backhaul. Mickey and I met last year here and agreed to do this. He founded Rakuten, an online shopping mall, 22 years ago in Japan. They now have $10 billion in revenue, and now they have decided to build this next generation cloud-based mobile network, and we have had the honor of partnering with them to get this going in the first phase. So thank you for the time today, and please join me in welcoming Mickey to the stage.
Thank you.
You got one?
Hey.
All right.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And Chuck, thank you for giving us this great opportunity to present Rakuten and Rakuten Mobile. Just for the people who are not knowledgeable about Rakuten, rather than we are the main sponsor of FC Barcelona, I wanted to talk about we are not just a sponsor, but we do business. So these are the kind of snapshot of Rakuten Group. I started Rakuten 22 years ago. At that time, the internet connection was still through copper analog telephone lines, basically 40.4 kilo BPS, and 28.8 was like a dream. But at that time, I believe the society will change and internet era will come. So I left the big bank, started very small internet shopping company, together as my younger partner, who was at that time 24 years old. Since then, we have been kept growing domestically, adding many businesses, growing globally. Now we are in US, Europe, Asia, Eastern Europe, Russia, everywhere. Our last year's gross merchandise sales was about $140 billion. And our global membership, since we have messaging app called Rakuten Viber, we have about 1.3 billion users. And again, as Chuck mentioned, our global kind of revenue was about $10 billion. But during the course of development, we kind of diversified our business models, centering around membership, data, and brand. That's why we are promoting our brand through Barcelona, through the Golden Warriors, and so forth. We started to add many different services, e-commerce, app businesses, digital content, and so forth. But one thing we have decided to do last year is get into mobile connectivity business. There is no single OTT player who we even tried to get into OTT layer because they believe, why do you need to have the connectivity? Why do you need to get into the mobile network businesses? Well, there's like a WhatsApp or Viber or Line or Snap or Instagram, and you can communicate. It's a commodity. Why do you need to have, 4G or 5G network? It's going to cost you tens of billions of dollars. Doesn't make sense. But I will going to really present the way we are going to do is totally different from the other, what I call senior telephone mobile companies. So today, one of my mission is to really present totally new approach of building 4G and 5G network. So let's run the video.
The future of telecom is fast and nimble, and it takes place in the cloud. For traditional telecom networks, that's a challenge. They're racing ahead, but their reliance on legacy architectures and custom hardware is holding them back. Right at the moment when 5G is about to change everything. Revolutionary speed, transformational possibilities. At Rakuten, we're ready for it. We're building the first end-to-end, fully virtualized, cloud-native 5G-ready mobile network, which means we're not tied down by custom hardware. We don't implement upgrades device by device. Instead, we deploy all our services via software in the cloud, where we can break every functionality down into microservice components. Each component its own independent software program. Using microservices, we can develop new innovative applications rapidly, test them comprehensively, deploy them reliably. Modifications like upgrades, maintenance, capacity scaling are faster, cost less, and don't require downtime. And new services can be deployed nimbly, at scale, automatically, on demand. Trusted code, faster delivery, continuous innovation. The cloud-native network for the future. Rakuten.
So when you come to MWC this year, every single booth is talking about 5G, and most of the companies are talking about, we're going to do exactly what Rakuten is doing. We're going to have a cloud core. But the way we construct our cloud-based mobile network, 4G, 5G, is totally different from other companies who are claiming that they are doing the cloud-based. First of all, we are end-to-end software virtualized cloud network, meaning that from the antenna head to the antenna head, we do not have so much specialized hardware. Everything is softwareized and virtualized and put on the cloud. From the day one, we are 5G ready. Other telecom carriers need to build extra 5G network or need to consider how they can connect the 5G network to 4G network. We are just software. Inside it, our cloud is just IPv6 network. So it's really easy. Again, all these hardwares is common hardwares, and our number of SKUs of hardware is very, very small, probably close to 1% of other incumbent big telephone companies. So it's really easy to manage. Everything is automated, really easy to plug in services, and almost zero cost or very small cost to modify our network to adopt 5G. But I was asking myself, what does this mean? Okay. Of course, our cost is going to be much lower than traditional telephone companies. Probably our maintenance people, we may need maybe 100. But if you think about how many maintenance people the traditional telecom has, it's over 10,000 people maintaining base stations, their specialized hardwares, and once that single point failed, it is very difficult to recover. Again, everything is automated for us, and every irregular activities will be detected automatically and will be notified. The investment is, of course, is going to be significantly lower than traditional way, because we are just using common hardwares, ASIC chips, nothing special, and everything is softwareized. Most likely, our investment is going to be less than half of the traditional telecom companies, just for 4G alone. If you think about combining 4G and 5G, the difference is going to be very, very, very big. We're not talking about 50% reduction. We're talking about 70 to 80% reduction if you include 4G and 5G. Our system, as I mentioned, is much more reliable. Again, it's a crowd. So if one hardware malfunctions, we just move to the another automatically. And with the scalability, we can just add another hardware, and we can scale as much as we want. And internally, it's IPv6. So throughput is much faster than the traditional, what they call core. So basically, it's fast, and it's 5G ready. And we kind of debundle the hardware and put everything to the software, virtualize, and put onto the cloud. So, but it's not just about the cost and the economic efficiency or scalability. I think this has a little bit more bigger meaning for mobile industry or mobile ecosystem in general. Because as a person who has been in this industry for 22 years, the mobile network has been always a mystery. We went a little bit too much. Hold on. Can you go back one slide? Oops. Okay. So always the people who are living in internet. You guys are moving back too fast. I don't think this system is 5G ready. Okay, stop there. I'm going to control. Okay, one more. Yep, okay. So we have been doing business in this kind of internet world, and mobile through the gateway was connected. And so traditional telecoms has been a mystery for us. We don't know what they're doing inside. I don't know how they created their core system. For me, coming from internet world, it looked like a spaghetti, to be very honest. So what we have done is very, very simple. Use internet technology and enabled 5G devices to be able to be connected. So in a way, conceptually, before you had internet, through the way to connect to the mobile network. What we are talking about using the technology we have been developing for 22 years, put everything onto the internet through our private cloud and connect all the services. So AI services, maybe translation services, or IoT can be easily connected to our cloud because it's internet from the day one. And we also created Rakuten Cloud Lab, which is just a mirror site of our cloud. So our partner Cloud Lab can develop new services and can just test on our Cloud Lab. And if it works, we can just deploy it and make it available to the users. As simple as that. So process engineering is significant. Think about it. Before you develop the software, you need to test it over and over again with many changing configuration of the hardwares, and it took months to implement one change. At Rakuten, we can change anytime, real time, as much as we want. So what I want to tell you is our architecture is completely different. Our philosophy of network is completely different. And we are now presenting total new concept for mobile network. Thank you very much for listening to me, and have a nice rest of the week. Thank you.
Well, if you came here this morning a little bit skeptical about the evolution of 5G, I'm guessing that after listening to Chuck and Mikitani-san, that your perspective will have shifted a little bit. Although I have to question that I'm not 100% sure that Fortnite is truly the killer app that we're looking for 5G. According to two young geniuses I know, apparently it's Apex Legends is the shift that we're seeing happening in the market. So our next speaker is also at the heart of this technology revolution. As a young engineer, he personally led the development of the ARM7 and ARM9 microprocessors that found their way into the world's first digital mobile phones. But the company he's leading today is not only about processors, it's becoming more and more software driven. And as he looks forward towards a massive IoT set of applications, they're building the IoT platform for connecting data, devices, and connectivity across a full spectrum of future industrial use cases. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Simon Segars, from the CEO of ARM. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. How are you doing? Oh, come on, you can do better than that. All right, well, for me anyway, it's my pleasure to be here with you at Mobile World Congress 2019. And 2019, I think, really is going to be a transitional year, not just for the mobile industry, but for the technology industry as a whole, with the delivery now of 5G. 5G is going to deliver, enormous things for us. We've been hearing about that all throughout this conference. It's going to deliver capabilities that pretty soon we are going to take for granted. But not too long ago, were completely unthinkable. Just looking around this room, you all look to be kind of roughly in my age bracket. So think back to when you were at university and the kind of technologies that you might have been thinking about that were available to people today. I'm sure completely different to what we actually have. Back when I was at university, analog phones were these expensive, very exotic things. Unleaded petrol had just really become a thing. And I was at university doing electronic engineering, but had friends studying artificial intelligence. And at the time, that was really theoretical. It seemed, in our discussions, like it was really a combination of a degree in philosophy and science fiction. Now today, the world has of course changed enormously. I'm looking forward to getting a 5G handset pretty soon. I now drive an electric car and not really worrying about gas. And AI services that back then seemed like science fiction Well, we take them for granted today. They're helping drive the cars, they're helping us with searches, they're helping us with voice recognition. We're using them all the time. So we're benefiting from this. We're going to benefit from everything that is to come from 5G. But the real benefits are going to come to the next generation. They're going to benefit even more from what we're doing. And to explore what the next generation of consumers actually think about technology, later on we're going to have 4 representatives of that age group join me here on stage for a panel, which is going to be pretty fun, and it's going to lift the lid on what young people think about technology. This technology is evolving really rapidly. It's a far cry from anything we've seen before, and ushers in what I call the 5th wave of computing. The 5th wave of computing is about the combination of 5G, of IoT, and AI, all technologies which are coming to a level of maturity at the same time. And whilst individually they're really powerful, it's the combination of them that will unleash an era of data-driven computing, really unleash the potential of AI, and unlock patterns in data that humans just can't see. It's going to be incredibly transformational for us all. And it's going to enable intelligence in many, many, many devices. It's going to change how we live, how we work, how we learn, how we play. It's going to change every aspect of our lives. Now, for us, kind of who've been working in this for a long time, this is just kind of the next step. It's the delivery of the work that we're doing. But for the young, well, this is really just how the world is. What we're seeing now is the first generation of true digital natives coming of an age where they're really starting to appreciate this technology. And to explore this further, we wanted to dig into it. So we just recently ran a survey polling over 2,000 11 to 18-year-olds to find out what they thought about technology. And it makes really interesting reading. They've weighed in on things like online behavior, about how technology will impact schools, about how technology will help care for the elderly, and this is something that you all want to pay attention to. So it makes fascinating reading, and we have this report, it's called Youth on Tech, it's available on our website. I really recommend you take a look at that. And to whet your appetite, I'll give you a couple of insights now. If you thought your kids were going to look after you in your old age, well, turns out you were wrong. What young people are seeing is a real interest in robotics, and this idea that robots can help take care of the elderly came out quite strongly in this report. So that elderly is going to be you and I. So if you're working on robotics, then start thinking about, empathy, caring, sympathy, because that's what the technology we all are going to need. So there's lots of optimism when you look through the report and reflect on how kids are looking at technology. But interestingly, kids are seeing a potentially darker side of technology too. The majority see that, and a large majority, see that social media platforms can be addictive. Although it's interesting when you dig into it that only about half of them think that they personally have an issue. It's more their friends. So it's a fascinating read. There's lots of optimism in there, but there's also a really mature appreciation of some of the negatives that come from this digital technology that we have now. So take a read. There's some fascinating insights in there for people running businesses and also for parents. So this insight to young people's views on technology is something that's interested us in ARM for a long time and led us last year to create a program we call Generation ARM to Z, or Z, depending on where you are in the world. And this is a program that we thought we'd set up to get kids and young people engaged in a discussion about where technology is going next. In ARM, our technology takes a long time to be developed and then deployed and then delivered to people, so we're always trying to think ahead. So we thought, well, hey, hang on a minute. Why don't we start asking young people what they think? Why not give them a voice in the future that we're trying to create with technology? I'm often asked, as many of you are, I'm sure, what's going to be the killer app for 5G? And I can come up with some ideas, but frankly, I don't know. That killer app is going to be created by somebody who probably right now is at home, tinkering around, taking things apart, trying to work out how they work, putting them back together again, and maybe it still works. And they're going to come up with some ideas. They're going to come up with the ideas that will truly allow us to deliver on the full benefits of 5G. Because I think those benefits are only going to come from the kind of unencumbered thinking that the youth have, this unencumbrance that comes from not really knowing what is impossible. And it creates a new optimism about what you can do with technology. So this has fascinated us, and I've got a short video here to give you a flavor of what these kids think about the world.
Having the internet gives lots of people much more ability to have access to different things that they might not otherwise be able to do. I think we're really becoming reliant on technology, and I'm not sure if it's a good thing, but I guess only time will tell.
Technology has impacted the way my generation builds a perspective and generates a view of culture. I think that if we can steer the way that we develop technology into something more of augmenting our thoughts and the way that we make day-to-day decisions, we could, create solutions that could help even more people and could be even more impactful.
Technology is like a puzzle. Pretty much any technology is hackable. If I could invent anything, I would make a cybersecurity device that could go into any technology. It would be able to protect us against almost all threats.
In the future, I'm sure as all young people and adults have dreamt of, perhaps teleportation could be something new, even if it's through different things like VR, mixed reality, augmented reality. But it'd be really cool, even if it's not in the way we conceptualize it now.
The internet's like a big family, whether you want to use it to encourage people or use it to put them down.
You've got loads of open source material, things like that, that people are then able to access over the internet. And I think it's going to be really transformative for those who otherwise wouldn't really be able to get out there and find things that they want to do.
Before the proliferation of technology, it was a lot more difficult to make something go national or even global. Now though, I feel that technology is helping to shape our world for the better through making our ideas reach people on a larger scale.
So I think this is pretty cool. And to explore this further, we've invited 4 of our tech ambassadors to join us here on stage in what I'm told is a first for Mobile World Congress. Even with me pulling up the average age, this is by far the youngest panel that's ever taken the stage here at MWC. So please join me in welcoming out my friends, Emma, Avi, Ruben, and Samira. Guys, coming out. All right. How are you going? Good morning so far?
Yeah. Morning.
Excellent. All right, so why don't we start with quick introductions. So tell us a bit about yourself, where you're from, how old you are, and what you've been doing with technology.
Sure. Hi, my name is Emma Yang. I'm 15 years old and I'm from New York City, and I'm the founder of Timeless, an app that uses artificial intelligence-based facial recognition technology to empower Alzheimer's patients. One of my non-tech hobbies is photography, and I joined Generation ARM2Z because our generation are the future leaders and consumers of tech, and we should have a say in how the tech industry is innovating right now.
Hi, my name is Avi and I'm 11 years old.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Avi and I'm 11 years old. I live in London and my favorite hobbies are coding, making, football, swimming and tag rugby. I'm the founder of my own company called Girls Into Coding, where our aim is to try and involve as many girls as possible into coding and STEM-based activities. I wanted to join Generation ARM2Z because I think it's a very visible way to share my views on technology and to inspire other young people. I believe it's important for my generation to play a key part in guiding the direction of technology in the future.
What's up, everyone? My name is Ruben Paul. I am 13 years old, and I am the founder and CEO of my nonprofit organization, Cyber Shaolin. Cyber Shaolin strives to educate and equip the current and next generation with the knowledge of cybersecurity dangers and defenses so that they will be empowered to make wise decisions in the cyberspace. We achieve our mission through making small educational videos on cybersecurity and technology topics, and all of our content is free, so anyone, anywhere in the world can use it. Some of my hobbies outside of tech is I like to do gymnastics, I like to play the drums and piano, I like to play hockey, and I do Kung Fu. So just this last Thursday, I passed my 3rd degree black belt test, so that was really cool, so don't mess with me. I am known as the Cyber Ninja around the world, and I love to hack. The reason why I joined Generation ARM to Z was because I wanted to be the voice of my generation on a very serious topic, cybersecurity. Thank you.
Hi guys, my name is Samira Mehta. I am 10 years old and I'm from Silicon Valley, California. I am the CEO and founder of Coder Bunnies. My mission is to get young kids excited about coding in a really fun way. And that's why I created board games that basically want to teach kids the concepts of coding and artificial intelligence. My hobbies include coding, I love to code, and I also really love artificial intelligence. Besides that, I love the stage. Whether it's theater or public speaking, I just love it all. I wanted to join Generation ARM to Z because I want to speak up for my generation. We kids are the people who will be living in this world for the next 75 years. So it's up to us how we want to use, make, and shape the technology around us to revolutionize the world as we know it.
So you all are feeling kind of inadequate right now, I'm guessing. Turns out this is a panel of tech CEOs after all. So, great, very good, very good. So I want to go back to talk a little bit about robots. We saw in some of the data this idea about robots looking after people in the future. So Avi, I want to come to you first because you've been building robots. I've seen the video clips of the robots you're building. Really cool. So what inspired you to get into building robots?
Well, I went to these events and lots of people had built robots and brought them to show, and I thought that was really cool to see ordinary people who can make something using technology and coding, and I wanted to have a go and try it. So I decided to build a robot with some help from my dad, who's actually a teacher, and he teaches art and product design, so he knows a lot about making and how to build things. And also my mom, she likes to tinker around with technology, so she helped me to kind of code it. And also I have a mentor who is very good with Python, so we kind of all came together and we made the robot.
Excellent. So, and as we said in the data there, robots potentially have a future, and technology has a big future in looking after people and healthcare. So, Emma, coming to you, your app is all about helping people with Alzheimer's. Apologise. And I know this is something that's touched you personally. So, tell us a bit about what you're doing there and how you see technology helping people in the future from a healthcare point of view.
My app was inspired by my experience with my grandmother who has Alzheimer's disease, and when I was around 12, I started to realize, what a great impact apps can have. Things that go from a family or community aspect or scale all the way up to the national scale or even global scale. And I wanted to kind of take my experiences and create something that could help people around the world. So I think that technology is a great tool for kind of expanding on healthcare, because there are so many people out there who are inaccessible, who are underserved, such as the elderly, such as the Alzheimer's population. There are people who have been left behind by the industry, and I think that technology is going to help us fill that gap because we're able to reach so many more people now.
So as technology provides more of a role in our lives, healthcare is really sensitive data. It's information that really has to be held securely. And security, Ruben, for you is a big passion. And you were telling us a story about hacking a teddy bear, an internet-connected toy, which was pretty scary. So share with the audience a little bit about that.
About last year, or 2 years ago, I hacked a smart toy teddy bear. We used a Bluetooth low-energy sniffer to intercept packets, and we found out the sequence of codes that we needed to crack it. And whenever I did, I was able to turn the smart toy bear into a remote surveillance spying device, which could record conversations, and I could play them back. I think security and technology is very important, because if security and technology is not built today securely, then in the future, when autonomous and connected technologies and blockchain and all these technologies are being used, they won't be able to be used securely. Autonomous can become an attacker's advantage, blockchain can become breached, and connected technologies can become catastrophic.
So if you thought you were doing security well, you're 11, right?
13.
13. Be worried and get to work on that. So what's interesting about you all really taking a passion to coding, and for the future, I think it's going to be really important that everybody knows how to code. Samara, this is an area that's of real interest to you, helping people get interested in coding and bring computers to life. So tell us a bit about your board game, which is kind of interesting because it's this kind of seemingly old school physical thing, but it's really helping.
Yeah, so basically I created a board game that teaches kids to code. Now you must be wondering, I'm crazy, right? How would you create a board game while coding is supposed to be online, right? So with the power of a board game, I believe it's easier to get kids started. Usually in tech, it's harder to get kids started when you're starting off with a computer. However, if we can start kids off with a board game, a fun and easier way for kids to learn code, then once they learn the concepts from my board game, once they go back to the computer, the concepts will be much easier for them. Because it turns out all the same concepts that they learned in my board game are basically the same concepts used in real computer programming languages like Python, Java, C, C++, HTML, Ruby, etc. So basically the kids can play the game first, learn the concepts, then go back to the computer and have fun and learn code.
Very good, very good. Now this conference is all about 5G, and trust me, everybody in the audience here is very proud of rolling out 5G, and you should be. But for kids, do you all care about 5G? I mean, Emma, is this something that's really been on your mind, or do you think on the minds of your friends at school?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm really excited about the possibilities with healthcare and kind of making that more accessible. One thing that I saw that I'm really excited for is because of the lower latency and higher capacity, we're able to bring remote surgery or kind of remote diagnostics to people who aren't currently able to access healthcare, because there are underserved populations that have been, we need to be filling those gaps and kind of finding those discrepancies and filling them with the new technologies we're making. And so disruptive technologies and innovations like 5G could be helping us carry those healthcare and other fields back into those populations.
Samara, you're from the other side of the US. Is 5G making an impact on your life? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so many people think that as kids we don't really care about 5G, but I think 5G is making an impact on everybody. So for me, I think the main thing I find interesting about 5G is its reaction time. So the reaction time of 5G is just 1 millisecond. Now compared to the human reaction time of 200 milliseconds, now that's pretty fast. We can't even yet begin to imagine the impossible possibilities that are achievable with the power of 5G, like healthcare, power of self-driving cars, you can play video games at rapid, fast speed, and there's so much more.
If I may add on to that,
yeah.
I think 5G is a very important thing, and it's going to lead into the future, lead into autonomous connected technologies, things like this. But one thing that we have to keep in mind is 5G is going to change infrastructure. With millimeter waves and small cells, street lights and traffic lights are going to have small cells in them. Our world is going to be changing to what we have to do. So just one thing to keep in mind, and with all of that, security needs to be in place so somebody can't hack 5G, hack those fast speeds and then do something which is wrong, because that is going to be powering autonomous. If you're going to be in a self-driving car and somebody hacks it, turns on the brakes, steers you to the left, steers you to the right, the consequences can become really bad.
Absolutely. So yeah, really important we get security right in 5G. Now, 5G is the evolution of mobile. Mobile's been a transformational technology, and one of the things it's brought in and really helped explode it is social media. And you're all very active on social media, and the kind of perceived wisdom from out here is that kids really don't care much about privacy online. I know you care about security, but in general don't care too much about security. But what do you all think about that? Do you think you and your friends are really giving much thought to privacy? Maybe Avi.
I think they should be cautious about what they send online, because whoever has received that information could use it against them. There are many threats out there, and some of them are clickjacking, unsafe passwords, viruses and malware, identity theft, and they're like things that can happen to you and your computer, and it could like cause damage and steal private information. And I think we definitely all need to be careful about who we meet and what we share online, and making sure we always read fine print and updating our privacy settings.
So turns out that you all think about privacy in pretty much the same way that adults do after all, which is kind of interesting. And on this kind of idea of you all thinking differently about technology from adults, you know, how do you think that is different? Do you think there is a difference in the way that you think about technology versus adults? Ruben, maybe come to you with that.
The younger generation solves problems differently than adults. We think of technologies differently. We try to invent new things. We try to create new things. We try to create things that we want. So this generation is very prone to emojis and pictures, which is why Snapchat and Instagram are very popular. So technology is changing to us. In the past, we had to adapt to technology, but now technology is changing to us. We're fueling the rapid growth of technology and trying to improve and create more technologies better than it has been before.
Samara, you think kids and adults think differently about technologies?
Yeah, so technology, I pretty much agree with Ruben. We've adapted to technology. However, now we need technology to adapt to us. So as being the future generation, technology is going to make such a big impact on all of us with all these new technologies, coding, AI, and now 5G. I think kids need to be a little more aware, a little more safe, but at the same time, adapt ourselves to the technology as technology is adapted to us.
All right, so we're going to run out of time in a moment, so I'm going to give a last question to each of you, which is, you've got the world's technology sector sitting in front of you. What do you want them to do as they're delivering the next generation of technology? Emma?
Sure. I think that the most important thing to think about is kind of find not where you think the technology is going to be most successful. Don't just look at the Uber for this or the Instagram for that. We're always looking there, but also look for where are the places that we're not currently covering, because those are the places that we can actually have innovation with the underserved populations, with people that we're not currently reaching. It's incredibly important that we make sure that technology catches up with them as well.
I think we need to make technology more accessible, so when it comes to shaping and building new technology, please take into account the realities of people living in different parts of the world, as they might not have access to fast technology like we have. So if you were to make your software less code heavy, then people who don't have access to fast internet would be able to use the internet to then use your software.
Technology that you create today will impact not only our generation, but many more to come. If that technology is not built securely and built right, then not only does it impact companies and countries, it also impacts us children. So keep in mind that security has to be in place and that we need to make the right technologies, because on top of that, we children are going to have to come back and fix the mistakes that you guys make. So.
Yeah, so basically I think you guys are just amazing with the work you're doing right now. I would just like to say thank you to all of you. Thank you. Here today, we stand in each other's futures. You create the technologies and systems that bring our world together. Because of what you do, it's easier for me to stay in touch with my friends and family. And I'm a part of your future. I am proud and excited to be a part of this future generation, pushing the boundaries of technology that are yet to come. And that future has already begun.
Excellent. All right. Really good. I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap it up. We in ARM are going to keep this conversation going. My I guess, closing thought to you all is, as probably next year at Mobile World Congress, we'll be talking about 6G, and that is the next generation. But let's not forget, who the customers of that technology are. So I encourage you all to start thinking about that voice of the future. Lastly, I want to thank you guys so much for joining us. I want to thank your parents for bringing you here and enabling you to participate. And thank you all for your time this morning. It's been a great panel. Thank you.
Thank you.
So folks, how inspiring was that? I mean, it was humbling, like incredible wisdom, not just talking about technology, but talking about ethics. I mean, hands up if you feel slightly less worthy now. I mean, oh, I've got to have a conversation with my 10 and 14-year-old. So at Accenture, we talk about something called epic disruption. And I think in the last segments, you've had a good sense of what's going on in the world around this thing, epic disruption. But let me sort of bring it into the context for our next conversation with three CEOs of what's going on in our sector. So firstly, in our industry, you'll hear a lot of people talking about convergence. Fixed, wireline, wireless, cable, media coming together. And I believe the AT&T Time Warner deal got approved finally by the US courts yesterday. Although that flavor of convergence is different from one that we'll hear about a bit more around Liberty Global and Vodafone. Everyone knows about the OTT players coming in over the top of the networks that are being built and competing away and monetizing the investments of others. And the pressure that that brings on people's financials. And so if you have communication service providers earning mid-single digits returns on capital, but actually the weighted average cost of capital is higher, things are upside down. And obviously investors are raising questions about, well, what does that mean in a world where there's a lot of investment still in front of us to bring 5G to life? And then we heard already about challenger brands. So these are challenger networks. Miki-san talked about it in Japan. Those of you from India will be very familiar with Jio in India. 270 million subscribers, brand new 4G LTE network stood up quickly from nothing just a few years ago, creating a challenge in the space. So that's within the sector. The outside the sector, the macro environment, I think everyone can talk about, is more complicated. There's the strategic technology arms race between the great powers, so the role of technology becoming ever more to the fore, showing up in people's legislation. And then in the technology zone itself, you'll hear us talk about 5G, IoT, AI, cloud, security, all of these things coming together, creating combinations of innovation that allow new companies to do things better, faster, cheaper than yesterday. And that, of course, is where disruption comes from. So like I said, at Accenture, we call all of that epic disruption, and I'm looking forward to having a great conversation with three superstars from our industry on that in a second. So we have for you, in a minute, Mike Frese, who's the Vice Chairman and CEO of Liberty Global. Mike was involved in launching the international expansion of the company 28 years ago. So he's been in the middle of the deal making of that company, and I understand that he doesn't like to rest on that front. He has helped build the company through its focus on customers and customer centricity into one of the world's leading international TV and broadband companies, now with 51 million subscribers, and a relentless commitment to innovation and investment in the networks. And with that innovation and with that scaling has become first to champion a global scale, gigabit speed, OTT integration, leading fixed mobile convergence revolution in Europe. Hatem Dowidar is the CEO of Etisalat Global, leading the activities of the operating companies of Etisalat outside the home country of UAE. Hatem has been heavily involved in the growth of Etisalat Group international companies, mostly in the emerging markets. Again, with 140 million subscribers, Etisalat was named the most valuable brand in the Middle East and Africa, both in 2017 and 2018, thanks to its focus on digital innovation. And Hatem is also a board member of the GSMA. And Andy Penn, the CEO of Telstra, leads one of the world's biggest telecom companies, the largest CSP in Australia, and became its CEO in 2015, before that joining the company as the CFO. Outside of the business, Andy has contributed widely to the not-for-profit community and many organizations in that space. He's a Life Governor and Foundation board member for Very Special Kids, and he's also a member of the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation Advisory Council. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mike, Hatem, and Andy. Well, good morning again. So with that background and what you've heard this morning so far, I'd like to ask each of you a couple of the top priorities that you're focused on for your businesses now, given that context. So, Mike.
Sure. I mean, first of all, this has been a really exciting conference. There's some incredible things happening. That last panel was insane. I have young kids too, and to listen to them, how articulate they were and excited about the future. One of the things that I've seen here that excited me, of course, and I think Chuck mentioned it too, was the industrial and enterprise applications. For me, I think consumers are going to win no matter what in 5G. More mobile broadband, faster speeds, foldable phones, it's all going to happen. But I think, as Chuck said earlier, the real opportunity in the near term, I think, is the industrial enterprise applications. But I have to put a note of caution out there too. And you've always had operators on the stage, which is good. When I was here 2 years ago, I said I thought the 5G evolution might be a pipe dream, meaning I'm not sure how it will happen. I think for many operators today, it could be a bad dream. I was reading just outside in the green room that it's going to take something like $2.7 trillion of capital to get infrastructure and networks rolled out around the world, 300 to 500 billion alone just in Europe. And that's a tough ask. So I think, people who are building apps and regulators and vendors are very excited about it, but operators are a little nervous to try to figure out how to make the economics work. So with that as a background, I mean, it's been a great conference for us. We're mostly a pay TV company, as you said, with broadband and mobile as sort of a second and third business for us. And Europe has been a great market for us. We're going to stay heavily invested in Europe. We are making some decisions about exiting, but I'm principally worried about the operator side of things. So hopefully we can talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll come back to that. Hatem, from your side.
I think, like everyone in this conference, like the theme of MWC 19, 5G is here now. And I think it's very important to understand that it's not only about the infrastructure and the technology. There are lots of things still remaining. There are still spectrum in many countries that is still not allocated yet. How it's going to be allocated, how much it costs. We have to understand, as an industry, we just finished the rollout of 4G in many, and I am very exposed to emerging markets. We just have got 4G in emerging markets, and we need to make sure that we are getting some return on that investment before we rush into 5G. And fortunately, there are some improvements to 4G, but I think all the energy is going to 5G. So we need still to be a bit sane about utilizing 4G more, getting more out of it, getting more connectivity to the unconnected, while still doing 5G. So we have markets that 5G is important. I think the applications are getting there, and we're seeing more of it here, from security applications, IoT, and all kinds of things, from driverless cars to drones and so on. And I think it's becoming more than just a demo. Some of these things are becoming workable models, so things that can really be seen on the roads, that can be seen in the skies in the coming month and very, very few years. So it has been very interesting. And the other side is the network virtualization. I think similar to what Miki said about Rakuten, I think even legacy operators like us don't like the spaghetti, and we're doing more and more virtualization. I think there are a lot of that in the conference as well.
Okay, so putting spaghetti into the cloud. So I'm hearing a tone here of being thoughtful about capital formation, capital preservation. But Andy, your perspective.
Yeah, look, a couple of thoughts. I mean, just pick up on one of the points that you made in your introduction, which is, if you look at the global telco industry, return on capital employed is pretty poor. It's mid-single digits, and that dynamic hasn't really changed very much over the last 10 years. I mean, if anything, it's declining, and that's as a consequence of capex to sales creeping up to meet the ever-increasing demand for connectivity and data volumes on the one hand, and revenues, if you just look through the cycles, being broadly flat. And so I think the thing that exercises my mind the most is, how do we make sure that we're not in the same position in another 10 years? How do we make sure that when we're talking about 6G, that we miss the opportunity with 5G? And that's, I think, how we need to look at it. And the interesting thing for me with 5G is it's not just 5G that's important, it's that 5G is arriving at the same time as a number of other technologies are actually starting to reach a degree of maturity. And so that, I mean, cloud compute, AI, ML, software-defined networking, edge compute. And it's actually the combination of these that I think creates the opportunity with 5G.
And I guess as Mickey says, I mean, there is a bit of polarization in the industry around 5G. Some people wish it was never invented, and we're in the camp actually of wanting to be first and a leader in 5G, and in fact we are in a very good position. But I think regardless, we have to see it as an opportunity to really turn around the fortunes of the industry and capture more of the value that is inevitably going to be created by bringing these technologies together. And you know, we talked a lot about use cases. There's, you know, all sorts of questions about use cases, and my theory on that is let's get it in the hands of our customers, and they'll be the ones who will tell us what the use cases are.
Okay. Well, thank you. So if we think about the fact that we've got to be thoughtful about how we're going to deploy future capital, but on the flip side, can't miss the opportunity. I'm very curious to know, and you each sit on top of very different portfolios, actually. So how do you think about the decision about saying, okay, I'm ready. We're going to pull the trigger. We're going to invest. I see a growth opportunity. What are the things that you look for to say, okay, these are the growth options I'm going for?
Well, I think I agree with what Andy said, and what Omar said, which is that you know, 5G is really evolutionary, not revolutionary, especially for consumers. I think it's going to be more mobile broadband and more video, which is terrific. So where we have mobile operations, which is in Holland and in Belgium, you know, we're going slowly, starting with B2B options and enterprise solutions, but mostly stepping back and being cautious, I would say, about that rollout time frame. So, I mean, I think most operators in Europe are, as you said, feeling a little bit nervous about the capital outlay and uncertain about the business model. And you've had 10 straight years of declining mobile revenue in Europe, 10 straight years, with the biggest issue being price. Decline in price every year. Consumers in Europe want more for less, and that's fair. They should want more for less if they can get it, but operators are in a tough spot. We just did some research that showed that, in fact, for broadband consumers anyway, price isn't the main issue. They're more interested in quality, speed, network coverage. 70% of the reason they've subscribed to a product is around those issues, not price. In fact, you know, we asked them what would they give up more, you know, what's more important to them, sex, chocolate, vacations, or broadband, and broadband was number one. So it's an incredibly powerful tool, but I think the price issue in this particular market, you know, is not a great reality for operators.
So okay, so and I mean, am I allowed to ski off piste, Mike?
Of course.
Okay, so what do you believe has been the fundamental price driver? Is it more regulatory, or is it more operator behaviors?
It's a combination of things. Regulatory has had the biggest impact on mobile revenues in Europe when you look at roaming and mobile termination rates and things of that nature. So the headwinds have been, you know, significantly related to regulatory pressures, but also competition. Remember, Europe has at least 175 MNOs and another 200 or 50, something like that, MVNOs. Jose Maria from Telefonica said the other day there's 450 people selling mobile in Europe. That's one operator for every 1 million subs. In the US, there are 4. In China, there are 2. So the pure fragmentation of the industry is a real challenge for operators, and there needs to be consolidation, in my opinion. Greater consolidation in the mobile space, which is inevitably going to be beneficial for investment and capital allocation. So I think it's a combination of things. Competition drives behavior. So for sure, I think the average 4G customer today is using 4 or 5 gig and getting 20 gig in their package. So a lot of unused capacity in 4G today. And that's because of competition. So, combination of things.
Actually, you're reminding me of some research we looked at where I think since the financial crisis, the OECD countries put in something like 1,200 measures of what you can call digital fragmentation. So data rules, privacy rules, wheeling of information rules. So you have a digital market that is relatively fragmented in Europe, and as you're saying, an industry structure that is hyper-fragmented. And so the combination maybe makes it harder to...
Very tough.
Yeah. Okay. Hatem.
I think, again, you know, two sides to the coin. So one side is going full speed into rollout of 5G. So in markets like the UAE, the home market, Saudi Arabia, we are rolling out the World Expo 2020 in Dubai is already our first commercial customer since last year for 5G. They're already using fixed 5G, and it's going to be fully by that time we're going to have a fully connected 5G ecosystem working. However, in other markets, we are still pushing ahead with 4G because we have still not got our return on capital, like Andy said, on 4G. We have both spectrum, we're rolling out, we're getting the services to many people. So I think we need to really balance out between the two, between what we have as technology coming in some markets, which we know there will be some returns, and in others focusing on 4G. I think the services also are going to vary because still in some markets you barely have the road infrastructure to have self-driving cars. So you need to focus more on connecting the people for knowledge, for trading, for other things, while some other markets you want to focus on having self-driving cars. So it's very important to think about also what the customers need. It doesn't help a customer to provide a technology that the handset today will cost them 2 years of income to buy. So this is another thing that will take time until we get there. So while we expect in the GCC, for example, handset penetration of 5G to be maybe 20% within the next 4 years, in other markets, even after 4 years, we're only going to have the very few of our customers will be able to afford these handsets. So this is something very important because this is a World Congress, this is not Europe or the US only, so we need to understand different customers around the world have different needs.
No, that's super helpful. So, yeah, I mean, I think it is sobering actually just listen to you. So, you have the fragmentation topic and also, the learning curve and the cost curve. And so you're saying that in several markets, it won't quite be ready yet. I would like to come back in a minute to B2C versus B2B and where you see the value. But Andy, some of your perspective on future growth?
Yeah, look, I think just a couple of comments. I mean, firstly, I would say for us, and I think this is the dynamic, the markets around the world are very different. And so operators are all looking at a very different situation. But certainly for us, the 5G business case stacks up on its own. Just for me, looking at the data volumes that are coming at me, the customer experience I need to deliver for our customers in Australia in the coming years, it makes more sense for me to invest in 5G, at the same time continuing to build capacity in 4G. So I can make the customer case, the business case stack up on that basis. The interesting thing for me is, as I said before, we talk a lot about use cases, and I'm slightly less concerned about that because I can see certainly a lot on the enterprise side. And also I firmly believe that once we put it into the hands of customers, those business cases, those use cases will start to become clearer. I'm actually thinking a lot, though, about how do we transform the commercial model? And by the commercial model, I mean how we package the solution for customers and how we price the solution for customers. Because I think it's not just the use cases. We've got to actually think differently about how we engage with our customers commercially if we are going to capture the value. I mean, even things such as, if part of the value that we're providing is a latency benefit, and the latency benefit can deliver value for our customers, well, maybe we need to take some risk on that. Maybe we need to share the benefit of that with our customers, but be prepared to put some skin in the game from a telco perspective. And I think these are very different ways of thinking about how we engage with customers for telcos. But I fear if we don't do that, we will end up in a situation where we ultimately are just providing the carriage and the margins get reduced down to that level. What it will also mean, though, is that we have to build more IP above the layer of the network as well. And so that's in applications and services, and that's a whole range of new skills. But unless we build IP in the applications layer as well as obviously the IP that we have in the network layer, we won't be able to make those commercial models work. So I'm thinking it, in a sense, more through the commercial lens than necessarily each of the individual, trying to come up with the, I guess, the killer app, because I think as other speakers have said, I'm not sure there is a killer app out there, but there's clearly a lot of value that's going to be created.
There's one killer app. That's video.
Video, okay.
I mean, today 60% of mobile consumption is video. That is going to grow fivefold in the next 4 or 5 years, whatever, 75, 80%. Let's be honest, that's what's driving mobile broadband, is people watching more television, changing in viewer habits, more embedded videos, more and more content. That's not a complicated app. It's not something that, but it is important to understand the ecosystem around video, which is why AT&T now has 40% of their revenue coming from media and content. and why we're partnering with Netflix, and we're looking at the content environment and saying, we need to be, in some cases, vertically integrated, in other cases, absolutely, aligned with content providers. Not just the big guys, YouTube and of course Google and Amazon, but I mean the traditional content providers. So it's, to me, that's the main driver.
So if I sort of just reflect back on what you all said, so you've got multiple markets that you're managing in different stages of development with different needs and different customer profiles. You have a range of new services that you need to develop and evolve on these new technologies. Sometimes they're simple like video, but they're probably not simple from a deal and commercial perspective of how you bring together the mosaic of all the different content providers. And you're asking your people to innovate, to come up with ways of spending money wisely, but stay relevant and build a better experience for customers. So when you sit in your CEO chair and think about how you guide your folks to navigate all of that, how do you think about it, Mike?
I think everybody who's sitting up here and anyone who is an operator, traditional operator, is worried about that next generation of consumers. That's the number one concern. And our traditional business models are being disrupted. The speaker just before us said he's building a brand new telecom network. Most people, not most people, but many large digital companies will find a way, or consider anyway, moving up that food chain into connectivity. So for us, it's about that next generation of consumers. And in a market like Belgium, where we have mobile and cable TV networks combined, we've launched not just converged products, so your mobile broadband, your fixed broadband at home, your TV is all one package, one bundle. You can share capacity across them. We've actually also launched a new product which doesn't have a set-top box at all. So we'll offer you 20 gigs of capacity in your mobile phone, a ton of content only on your mobile phone. You can cast it to your television. 200 megabits at home, because still it's the fixed business is the main business. I mean, 5G is not going to replace fixed. Let's be honest. 10 gig might go to 40 or 50 or 60 or 70 gig on the mobile phone, but the in-home is going to go from 150 to 600. So the ratio will come down a little bit, but we're going to consume so much bandwidth that fixed will be incredibly important. So converging networks and creating new products for the next generation of consumers who may not want a set-top box, who just want ease of use, great applications, video on their phone, but want massive amounts of connectivity. That's where we're leaning in.
That's awesome. Mike, I'm just going to ask a little follow-up, if I may, and then come back. So do you think that operators that are network only, like focus on network only, will not do so well in the future? Or do you think
you mean mobile network only?
I don't mind.
Yeah. Listen, I think you're going to have multiple mobile network operators in these markets. There will be some consolidation. There has to be, or else there won't be the capital. And I think most mobile operators will need some fixed connectivity to have that end-to-end experience for consumers and enterprise customers. And do you have to be vertically integrated? I'm not so sure. I think the AT&T decision to acquire Time Warner was somewhat a defensive move to ensure they have access to content. We were talking about Australia and your relationship with Foxtel and News Corp and content. I think it's market by market. And I think so much is happening in the app environment and content environment. As long as, I don't know that you have to own it to be successful.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Hatem, as you look inside, what do you tell your folks?
Yeah, I think, starting from the end here of what Mike said, I think it's not only about owning or generating the content. I think we need to focus on the customer in whatever way we can. Sometimes we need to partner, and I think, as an industry, we're more open to partnership now than before, because we feel that we have lost a little bit, well, not a little bit, we have lost quite a bit on trying to protect our turf until we got disrupted in many ways. So we need to see where we can generate the content, where we can own more of, let's say, the customer spend on entertainment as well as communication. I think it's important to have as many services to the customers as we could. So today in the current technology, it helps more to be in a country where you have your own fixed network, whether it's a fiber network or it's a cable network in any form, it helps. But I think also 5G will allow us in some markets where the fixed networks are almost non-existent to actually be able to reach homes with a fast service that allows us to get some services today that are impossible in these markets. You know, while, again, I'll give the contrast, while UAE is a market where 94% of the homes are directly connected with fiber, we have a market like Pakistan where less than 0.5% of homes are connected. So having a technology like this will help to deliver all kinds of services to the home. But it's very important that, again, we don't see what happened, the mistakes at the 3G, maybe not as much at 4G, but in 3G, where spectrum ends up being sold at crazy prices and ends up, rather than helping the industry, slowing down the industry. So it's very important, and I've said it in many occasions, I say it here in MWC 19, please, to regulators and governments, don't get too greedy, because closing the digital divide and helping connecting people is more important than making short-term gains on very high spectrum costs. This is not helping us invest more in the networks and invest more in serving the customers by just siphoning off as much as they can in spectrum cost.
And Hatem, do you see any evidence of any regulatory agency or government that's willing to consider not going for a big bang, huge monetization event up front, and maybe thinking about something more considered, defraying the cost over time, linking it to actual deployments?
Yeah, we have a couple of markets actually where the deal with the regulator is more based on revenue and profit share. And that case, it does work in a way, because we don't have to make that big payment up front. We only are making the payment when we are able to monetize this spectrum, this resource, and are able to connect the customers. So it does exist, that model does exist in a few markets, but not in enough markets. So regulators need to be very sober about this. If they want to close the digital divide, they need to promote us having more spectrum, especially 5G requires much more spectrum to deliver the service than previous generations.
Perfect, thank you. And Andy, as you guide your folks, what's top of mind?
Yeah, look, a couple of things. I mean, firstly, it's about, for us, the program's really currently about radically simplifying and improving the efficiency of the current business to provide a better customer experience. Because let's face it, telcos as an industry generically do not have a good track record in terms of the overall customer experience. So radically simplifying that, which I'll come back to. And then secondly, simultaneously building the culture and the capabilities for the future. So if I think about the history of our business, we're trying to move it from a world of, thousands and thousands of hard bundled products which customers sell customers not what they necessarily want all the time, with complex billing arrangements, and just creates this incredible amount of activity and customer frustration. So we're actually basically completely changing that. We're moving to 20 simplified core products with a range of value-added services, much more improved digital experiences. We're looking to take out 2/3 of calls that come through to our call centres, about a quarter of our workforce coming out as well. But ultimately, that all has to drive a better experience and to really put us in a position to be in a far more effective situation to take advantage of the opportunities that exist in the future. And there it's around building the capabilities for the future. Because again, if you think about a telco, telcos are typically organisations with, in Telstra's case, 150 years of history, where we've got deep skills and capabilities in network and electrical engineering. But we need skills in software engineering, in artificial intelligence, in cybersecurity. And of course, we're building those. But the number of people that we need to recruit into that space, I have a target recruitment number for the number of software engineers that I need to recruit in the next couple of years, and that number is bigger than the total number of software engineers that actually the whole of the Australian market delivers. So, I mean, just to put that in perspective. But then also, of course, as you're bringing these people in, you also have to change the nature of the way in which we work, because again, telcos are historically hierarchical bureaucratic types of organisations, and we need to be able to, if we're going to bring in new capability, new talent with software engineers, we need to be agile. We're currently going agile at scale. We need to bring in new practices around DevOps, human-centred design, lean, other practices, and that requires a change in the whole culture, the whole mindset of the organisation. So they're really, I guess, the two platforms on which we're transforming the organisation. And I see, you know, the 2020s, that next decade is that era when we can paint a very different story for the modern telco.
Wow. Yeah, so a whole range of other topics to consider. So I'm just watching the time here a little bit, and I'd like to maybe just go sideways onto B2B for a second. And any perspectives, you know, any of you want to comment on regarding what you think are the most exciting opportunities, you know, nearer term around B2B with the modern.
I'd say, you know, one of the biggest things is really around automation and robotics. And if you look at industry generally, the services industry is already relatively well digitized, but heavy industry isn't. Capital intensive industry isn't. So if you just look at Australia as a good use case is mining and resources. The miners have obviously gone through a bit of a roller coaster ride with commodity prices and demand coming off from China, and so they're thinking about where's their next wave of value come from. It's clearly got to come from productivity. So as you start to think about how you automate mines and how you introduce robotics into resources and mining, there's incredible opportunities. Woodside, which is a big customer of ours in Australia, has just recently established a new head office in Perth, and they've spent more on the tech than they actually in the building than they actually did on building the building, because they're actually building for a world where all of their gas trains, all of their resources, all of their processes need to be fully automated. And so there's incredible opportunities building private networks, applications, all sorts of automation. Just in logistics, similarly, agri-tech would be another area, healthcare. There's thousands of opportunities. And the interesting thing is we're already enabling a lot of these on 4G through IoT platforms, but 5G just brings the next level of latency, capacity, and speeds, obviously, to really transform the efficiency. You know, if what happens when a gas train basically has an issue, effectively you have to turn the thing off for 24 hours. You imagine how many millions of dollars it costs just to turn it off for 24 hours. So if you're actually sensing through every part of that process and addressing the issues which actually cause a gas train to maybe flip out, it's incredible productivity and efficiency savings.
It was interesting to hear Chuck say that he thought 75% of his revenue is enterprise. It was in the Nokia booth. I asked them when they were showing me some of their industrial applications, what % of your revenue in 5 years will be this versus other, you know, consumer products? 40%. So that to me is where the real energy is, the real excitement. And I think, you know, Chuck also said 4 billion machine-to-machine connections, only 400 million 5G phones. So 5G is certainly important part of the future, but it's not the here and now for consumers as much as it is for enterprise, I think.
Yeah, I mean, so over the next, I don't know, 15 years, Simon Segars was talking earlier about 1 trillion connected devices, a million connected devices, which is sort of mind-boggling. But I think I heard you just say, Andy, that for all those oil and gas customers out there, you're going to save them from the capex boom and bust cycle and help make the next wave much cheaper. So that's
but what's interesting, actually, when you think about those industries, a lot of the whole supply chain and the process has actually been designed around productivity. So if you take mining as an example, trucks have got bigger, shovels have got bigger, conveyors have got bigger. They've all got bigger to actually reduce the labour component, which is a cost efficiency. If you actually take the labour out of the system and it all moves over to robotics and automation, suddenly you actually even start to think differently about the capital equipment that goes in, and then suddenly bigger isn't better, actually quite often smaller is better, and so it will actually change the whole supply chain and the whole process of the industry.
Okay,
and,
so
I think it's also important to understand it's not only B2B, there's also the government as an element there. So we have examples where we have worked with the government to provide them services like from traffic management to security services, using both the fast connectivity but using AI on the background to monitor videos to alert the authorities for different things. So there are things that as an industry we can contribute to, not only connecting the dots, but as we have more experts, as we have more engineers and programmers and so on, we are able now also to step more into ICT and take the lead on working not only with businesses but with governments on providing some crucial services.
Perfect. And actually, I have heard a lot this week around smart cities really taking hold. particularly in places like China with some amazing innovation. So a final word from each of you of a message that you'd like to leave the audience with as you think about the landscape that we've covered off this morning. Mike.
Oh, if I had to leave you with one thought, it would be that for this future to be realized, for these incredible things to happen, both in infrastructure, technology, applications, services, we need less regulation, not more. If you trust in the partners and the players within the ecosystem to invest, and you want them to invest, I would say the main message for me would be to regulators is back off, let it breathe. I think you'll find it, that's where the energy happens.
I'm trying to think if that could be clearer. Hatem.
I can try it again.
I think it's going to be very exciting. I think I put definitely my voice with Mike about the regulators taking it easy on us, but also I want all the developers, manufacturers of equipment to think of emerging markets more. We need to have cheaper connectivity in many places. I know there are emerging technologies trying to cover with satellites or high-speed balloons or whatever, but actually there is still a lot of opportunity to cover smaller communities and villages on the ground with cheaper coverage that today is not yet there. So while we work on the great and glamorous 5G, let's work on some of the existing technologies and bring the cost further down.
Perfect, thank you. And Andy?
What I would say is let's be on the front foot. Let's not feel defensive. Let's be on the front foot. I think there are incredible opportunities ahead of us. As I say, I'm not worried about the use cases. I've got incredible confidence in the entrepreneurialism and innovation of our customers. We're at an incredibly exciting time on the cusp of 5G in conjunction with those other technologies. And I think this is an opportunity for us to change the paradigm of telco and the economics of telecommunications over the next decade. And let's not let ourselves get back into mid-single digit return on capital employed in 10 years' time when we're closing out 5G and looking at 6G.
Thank you. So ladies and gentlemen, what I think we just heard there in the last under 30 minutes was how three CEOs and companies are helping bring a lot of innovation to help improve how the world works and lives while dealing with the regulatory framework, industry consolidation necessary in Europe, pricing issues, technology, new products and services, culture, people management, and industry reconfiguration. So a small number of topics there for you. And these three gentlemen clearly are busy, and they've spent the time with us this morning. So please join me in thanking Mike, Hatem, and Andy.
Nice job.
Thanks, Sam.
Nice to see you. Yeah.